Promised to another man, she was won when a cowboy rode in with a better. Off her the rifle shot cracked across the valley just as Kate Brennan stepped out of the general store. She dropped her parcels and dove behind a water trough, her heart hammering against her ribs. Dust kicked up where the bullet struck the wooden planks beside her feet. 3 more shots followed in rapid succession, each one closer than the last. She pressed her back against the rough wood, trying to make herself as small as possible. The main street of Copper Ridge had erupted into chaos. Shopkeepers slammed their doors shut, women screamed, and gathered their children. Men scrambled for cover wherever they could find it. Kate risked a glance over the trough's edge. A stranger sat astride a dust-covered horse at the far end of town, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. He held a Winchester rifle across his saddle, the barrel still smoking. But he wasn't aiming at anyone anymore. He was just sitting there, waiting. Another rider emerged from behind the bank. Kate recognized him immediately. Her blood ran cold. It was Vernon Hayes, the man she was supposed to marry in 3 days. He had a pistol drawn and his face was twisted with rage. "You got no business here, Cole," Vernon shouted across the empty street. "This is my town. That's my woman you've been asking about." The stranger named Cole shifted in his saddle. When he spoke, his voice carried clear and steady through the morning air. "Your woman? That's not what I heard. I heard she's trapped in a deal made by her father before he died. I heard she never had a choice in the matter." Kate's breath caught. How did this stranger know about her situation? Her father had owed Vernon money, lots of it. When he died 6 months ago, Vernon had come calling with the old promissory note. The debt was substantial. The only way to settle it, Vernon had insisted, was for Kate to become his wife. She'd tried to refuse. She'd tried to find another way. But Vernon owned the bank, owned half the businesses in town, and had the sheriff in his pocket. "That's none of your concern," Vernon snarled. "Ride out now, or I'll put you in the ground." Cole nudged his horse forward a few steps. "I'm making it my concern. I've got a counteroffer for the lady if she's willing to hear it." Vernon fired without warning. The bullet whined past Cole's head, so close it must have parted his hair. But the stranger didn't flinch. Instead, he drew his own pistol with a speed that Kate had never seen before. He fired once. Vernon's hat flew off his head and tumbled through the air. "Next one won't miss," Cole said calmly. "Now, I suggest we let the lady decide her own future. Miss Brennan, if you're listening, I've got $20,000 in gold that says you don't have to marry this snake. It'll cover your father's debt twice over and leave plenty for you to start fresh wherever you want." Kate's mind reeled. $20,000? That was a fortune. But who was this man? Why would he offer such a sum for a woman he'd never met? Vernon's face had gone purple with fury. "You think you can buy her?" "She's already promised to me. We have an arrangement." "Arrangements can be broken," Cole replied, "especially when they were made under duress." Kate stood up slowly, her legs shaking. Every eye in town was on her now. She could feel the weight of their stares, their judgment, their curiosity. This was the moment. Whatever choice she made right now would determine the rest of her life. Kate's hands trembled as she stepped out from behind the water trough. The morning sun beat down on the empty street, making the dust shimmer like gold. Vernon's horse shifted nervously, sensing its rider's fury. The stranger named Cole sat perfectly still, waiting for her answer. "I don't even know who you are," Kate said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Why would you ride into town and offer such a sum for someone you've never met?" Cole tilted his hat back, and she finally saw his face clearly. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, with sun-weathered skin and gray eyes that held something she couldn't quite name. Not pity, something else. Understanding, maybe, or recognition of a shared experience. "Your brother was a friend of mine," Cole said. "Daniel and I rode together for 2 years down in Texas. He died, saving my life during a stampede near the Brazos River. Made me promise that if anything ever happened to him, I'd look after his family. I've been tracking you down for the better part of a year." Kate's throat tightened. Daniel, her older brother who'd left home 5 years ago seeking his fortune. She'd received one letter telling her he'd found work on a cattle drive, then nothing. She'd assumed he'd simply forgotten about her, moved on with his life. The thought that he'd died, that he'd spent his last moments thinking of her safety, made her eyes burn with unshed tears. "Daniel's dead?" she whispered. Cole nodded slowly. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. He was a good man. Brave. Loyal. He talked about you all the time. Told me about your father's gambling debts, about Vernon Hayes and his schemes. Daniel was trying to earn enough to come back and set things right. He made me swear I'd do it for him if he couldn't. Vernon spurred his horse forward a few paces. This is a touching story, but it changes nothing. Her father signed a legal document. The debt is real, and the only way to settle it is for Kate to honor their agreement and marry me. I've got gold that says otherwise, Cole said flatly. Real gold. Enough to pay off every cent of that debt and then some. Unless you're not really interested in the money, Vernon. Unless what you really want is to force a woman into marriage against her will. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Several of the townspeople who'd been watching from windows and doorways began to whisper among themselves. Kate could see the calculation in Vernon's eyes. He wanted her, true enough. But he also wanted to maintain his reputation as a respectable businessman. If he refused the gold and insisted on the marriage, people would start asking questions. "Where'd a drifter like you get 20,000 in gold?" Vernon demanded. "You probably stole it." "Earned it," Cole said. 2 years of honest work. Daniel and I were hired to track down a gang of cattle rustlers operating out of Mexico. There was a reward, a substantial one. Daniel's share is yours, Miss Brennan, if you want it. Your brother would have wanted you to have it. Would have wanted you to be free. Kate's mind raced through her options. She could take the money, pay off the debt, and send this stranger on his way. She'd be free of Vernon, but also alone, with no prospects in a town where Vernon controlled almost everything. He'd make her life difficult out of spite. Or she could refuse the money and go through with the marriage, honoring her father's agreement even though it meant a lifetime of misery. Or there was a third option, one that had been forming in her mind since Cole mentioned Daniel's dying wish. "If I take the money," Kate said carefully, "Vernon will still have power over me in this town. He'll find ways to make my life unbearable. I'll never be able to run a business, own property, or live in peace. Isn't that right, Vernon?" Vernon's smile was cold. "You're a smart girl, Kate. Smarter than your fool brother." "Yes, you're exactly right. Even without the marriage, I can make things very uncomfortable for you here." Cole's expression hardened. "Then she leaves with me." "Right now, leaves with you?" Vernon laughed. "And goes where? To do what?" "She'll be a ruined woman, traveling alone with a man she just met. Her reputation will be destroyed." "She'll have nothing." "She'll have her freedom," Cole said, "and 20,000 in gold. That's more than most people ever have." Kate made her decision. She walked across the street, her boots clicking against the hard-packed dirt. She picked up her scattered parcels from where she'd dropped them and tucked them under one arm. Then she walked directly to Cole's horse and looked up at him. "I'll take your offer," she said. "But not as charity. If you're willing to give me my brother's share of that reward, then I'm willing to work for it. I can ride, I can shoot, and I can keep accounts. Daniel taught me before he left. Whatever you need doing, I'll earn my keep." Something flickered in Cole's eyes. Respect, maybe. "That's more than fair, Miss Brennan." "There's one more condition," Kate added. "We stop by the bank first. I pay off my father's debt in full, in front of witnesses, so there's no question about it later. Then we ride out, and I never have to see Vernon Hayes again." Cole swung down from his horse and extended his hand. "You've got a deal." Vernon exploded from his saddle. "This is ridiculous." "You can't just ride into my town and steal my bride." "She was never your bride," Cole said quietly. "She was a debt you were trying to collect. Now the debt's paid, and you've got no claim on her whatsoever." Vernon reached for his pistol, but Cole was faster. His gun was out and cocked before Vernon's fingers touched the grip. "Don't," Cole said, his voice like iron. "I've tried to do this the civilized way. I've offered you more money than that debt was worth. I've given you a way out that lets you keep your pride. But if you draw that weapon, I'll assume you mean to use it, and I'll defend myself and Miss Brennan. Is that really how you want this to end?" The street had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching. Vernon's face worked through a series of expressions, rage and humiliation and calculation, all warring for dominance. Finally, he let his hand fall away from his gun. "This isn't over," Vernon said through clenched teeth. "Yes," Cole replied. "It is." They walked to the bank together, Cole leading his horse and Kate walking beside him. The sheriff stood on the boardwalk outside his office, watching but making no move to interfere. Kate realized that even lawmen could be bought, but they also knew when to stay out of a fight they couldn't win. Inside the bank, Cole produced a heavy leather saddlebag from his horse and dumped its contents onto the counting table. Gold coins spilled across the polished wood, glinting in the lamplight. The bank clerk's eyes went wide. "Count it," Cole said. "Whatever Miss Brennan's father owed, take it from that pile. Give me a receipt showing the debt is paid in full. And make sure Vernon Hayes signs it as satisfied." Vernon had followed them inside, along with half the town, it seemed. People crowded around the windows and door, craning to see. The clerk counted carefully, his fingers moving over the coins with practiced efficiency. Looked up nervously. The debt was $8,300, he said. There's more than $20,000 here. Take what's owed, Cole said. The rest belongs to Miss Brennan. The clerk prepared the paperwork with shaking hands. Vernon signed it with such force that his pen tore through the paper. Kate signed her own name carefully, making each letter clear and precise. When it was done, the clerk handed her the receipt and a new saddlebag containing the remaining gold. You're free, Miss Brennan, the clerk said quietly. The debt is settled. Kate felt something loosen in her chest, a tension she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Free. The word seemed too simple for what she felt. She turned to look at Vernon one last time. He stood rigid, his hands clenched into fists. You'll regret this, he said. Both of you. I don't think so, Kate replied. She was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Goodbye, Vernon. I hope I never see you again. They walked out of the bank together back into the sunlight. Cole's horse waited patiently where he'd left it. The townspeople parted to let them through, their faces showing a mixture of shock, disapproval, and in a few cases, barely concealed admiration. I need to get my things from the boarding house, Kate said. It won't take long. I'll wait here, Cole said. But be quick. I'd like to be well clear of this town before Vernon decides to cause more trouble. Kate hurried to the boarding house where she'd been living since her father died. Her room was small and spare, containing only the essentials. She packed her clothes, her mother's jewelry, and a daguerreotype of her family taken years ago when everyone was still alive and happy. It all fit into 2 small bags. Mrs. Patterson, the boarding house owner, watched from the doorway. You're really leaving with him? A stranger? He's not a stranger, Kate said. He was my brother's friend, and he's offering me something Vernon never could. What's that? A choice. Mrs. Patterson's expression softened. Then God go with you, child. You deserve better than what this town had planned for you. Kate hugged the older woman impulsively, then hurried back downstairs. Cole had acquired a second horse while she was gone, a sturdy mare with a gentle eye. He helped Kate secure her bags to the saddle, then handed her the reins. She's yours, he said. Her name's Bella. She's got a good temperament and she won't throw you, even in rough country. Kate ran her hand along the mare's neck. Thank you. For everything. Cole swung up onto his own horse. Don't thank me yet. We've got a long ride ahead, and I'm not entirely sure Vernon won't send men after us once he's had time to think about it. Where are we going? North? Cole said. I've got a ranch up in Montana Territory. It's not much yet, just a few 100 acres and a cabin, but it's mine. I could use help getting it established. If you're serious about working for your keep, there'll be plenty to do. Kate mounted Bella and settled into the saddle. It felt good to be on horseback again. She hadn't ridden since before her father died. I'm serious, she said. You won't regret this. I know, Cole said simply. They rode out of Copper Ridge at a steady trot, not too fast, but not lingering either. Kate didn't look back at the town. There was nothing there she wanted to remember. Everything that mattered was ahead of her now, whatever that might hold. The terrain opened up as they left the settlement behind. Rolling hills covered in sage and wild grass stretched in every direction, punctuated by rocky outcroppings and the occasional stand of cottonwood trees marking a creek or spring. The sky was impossibly blue, unmarred by even a single cloud. After an hour of riding, Cole finally spoke. Tell me about Daniel. What was he like as a boy? Kate smiled, the first real smile she'd felt in months. Reckless. Always getting into trouble. But he had a good heart. When our mother died, he was only 12, but he tried to take care of all of us. He'd sneak food from the kitchen to make sure my little sister and I had enough to eat, even when money was tight. He mentioned a sister, Cole said. Not you. A younger one. Kate's smile faded. Lily. She died of fever 3 years ago. She was only 14. I'm sorry. Daniel never knew. He'd already left by then. I wrote to him, but the letter probably never reached him. He was always moving, always chasing the next job or adventure. They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds the steady rhythm of hooves and the occasional cry of a hawk overhead. Kate found herself studying Cole from the corner of her eye. He sat his horse with easy confidence, moving with the animal rather than against it. His hands on the reins were relaxed but ready. This was a man who'd spent a lot of time in the saddle. What kind of ranch are you building? Kate asked eventually. Cattle, mostly. The land's good for grazing. There's a river running through the property, fresh water year-round. I've got about 50 head right now, but I'm hoping to expand. The railroad's coming through Montana, which means there'll be good markets for beef in the next few years. That's ambitious. Maybe. But I'm tired of drifting. Tired of other people's cattle, other people's land. I want something of my own. Something I can build and pass on someday. Pass on to who? Cole glanced at her, then away. I don't know yet. That's a question for the future. They made camp that night beside a small creek, well off the main road. Cole built a fire while Kate tended to the horses, rubbing them down and making sure they were securely hobbled. She noticed Cole watching her work with approval. Daniel taught you well, he said. He taught me everything he knew before he left, Kate said. I think he knew somehow that I'd need those skills, that I'd end up on my own. Cole prepared a simple meal of beans and bacon, which they ate in comfortable silence. The fire crackled and popped, sending sparks up into the darkening sky. Stars were beginning to appear, more than Kate had ever seen in town where the lights obscured them. Can I ask you something? Kate said finally. Why did you really come? I mean, I understand about Daniel and the promise you made. But you could have just sent the money. You didn't have to risk your life confronting Vernon. Cole was quiet for so long that Kate thought he might not answer. Then he said, I had a sister once. Younger than me. She got married to a man who seemed respectable, seemed like he'd take care of her. Turned out he was cruel, beat her when he'd been drinking, which was most nights. I didn't know until it was too late. By the time I found out, she'd already... He stopped, his jaw working. I'm sorry, Kate said softly. After that, I swore I'd never stand by and let another woman be forced into a situation she couldn't escape. When Daniel told me about you and Vernon, about the debt and your father's gambling, I knew I had to help. Not just because of my promise to Daniel, but because I couldn't live with myself otherwise. Kate understood. Sometimes the past made you do things that didn't make sense to anyone else, but made perfect sense to you. Thank you for telling me. Get some rest, Cole said, changing the subject. We've got a long way to go tomorrow, and I want to put as much distance between us and Copper Ridge as possible. Kate wrapped herself in her blanket and lay down near the fire. Despite everything that had happened, despite the uncertainty of her future, she felt safer than she had in months. Cole kept watch, his rifle across his lap, his eyes scanning the darkness beyond the firelight. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, Cole was shaking her shoulder gently. We've got company, he whispered. Kate sat up instantly, her heart pounding. Dawn was just beginning to lighten the eastern horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Cole pointed toward the south, where a small group of riders was visible in the distance. How many? Kate asked. 5, maybe 6. They're moving fast. Could be Vernon's men. What do we do? Cole was already kicking dirt over the fire and gathering their gear. We run. The horses are rested. We've got a head start. If we can make it to the canyon country north of here, we can lose them in the rocks. They mounted quickly and spurred their horses into a gallop. The mare Bella responded beautifully, stretching out into a smooth, ground-eating stride. Cole's horse matched her pace, and they raced across the open grassland with the rising sun at their backs. Kate risked a glance over her shoulder. The riders behind them had spotted them and were giving chase. She counted 6 men, all armed. They were still too far away to make out faces, but she didn't need to see them to know Vernon had sent them. He couldn't let it go, she shouted over the thunder of hooves. Men like him never can, Cole shouted back. Hold on, it's going to get rough. They plunged into broken terrain, the flat grassland giving way to ravines and boulder-strewn hillsides. The horses had to slow down, picking their way carefully through the rocks. Kate could hear the pursuing riders getting closer, their shouts echoing off the canyon walls. Cole led them through a narrow defile between 2 towering rock faces. Kate had to duck low over Bella's neck to avoid scraping her head on the overhanging stone. They emerged into a wider canyon, and Cole immediately swung his horse to the left, following a barely visible trail that switchbacked up the side of the cliff. Can they follow us up here? Kate called. They can try, Cole said grimly. But they'll have to do it single file, and I'll be waiting for them. At the top of the switchback, Cole dismounted and pulled his rifle from its scabbard. Keep going, he told Kate. Follow this trail north. There's a river about 5 miles ahead. Cross it and keep going. I'm not leaving you, Kate said. This isn't a discussion. If something happens to me, you need to get away. That gold will set you up anywhere you want to go. And if something happens to you, I'll spend the rest of my life knowing I ran away and left you to fight my battles alone. I'm staying. Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. The first of Vernon's men had entered the defile below. Cole took aim and fired. The shot ricocheted off the rock wall inches from the lead rider's head. The men scattered, diving for cover among the boulders. Kate dismounted and pulled her own rifle from where Cole had secured it to her saddle that morning. "Daniel taught me to shoot," she said. "I'm not the best, but I can hit what I aim at." Cole nodded curtly. "Stay low. Don't expose yourself. And don't hesitate if you get a clear shot." They crouched behind a jumble of rocks at the cliff's edge, their rifles trained on the trail below. Minutes ticked by. Kate's palms were sweating despite the cool morning air. She wiped them on her skirt and tightened her grip on the rifle. One of Vernon's men tried to make a run for the switchback. Cole fired, and the man's horse reared, throwing its rider. The man scrambled back to cover, unhurt but shaken. "You can't win this, Cole!" a voice shouted from below. Kate recognized it as belonging to Frank Miller, Vernon's foreman. "There's 6 of us and 2 of you. Give up the girl and the gold, and we'll let you ride out." "That's not going to happen," Cole shouted back. "This trail is the only way up. You want to try it? Go ahead. But the first man who shows his face is going to get shot. Maybe the second and third, too. Are you willing to die for Vernon Hayes' wounded pride, Frank?" Silence. Kate could hear the men below conferring in low voices. She pressed her cheek against the rifle stock, trying to steady her breathing. Then Frank shouted again. "Vernon says the girl's a thief. Says she stole money from the bank." Cole laughed, harsh and humorless. "That's a lie, and everyone in Copper Ridge knows it. I paid her father's debt in full, in front of witnesses." Vernon signed the receipt himself. If he's claiming otherwise now, he's a liar and a cheat. "Vernon says—" "I don't care what Vernon says," Cole interrupted. "You tell him he had his chance to settle this peaceful. He chose to send armed men after us instead. That makes him an outlaw, and you boys his accomplices. Now you can turn around and ride back to town, or you can try to come up this trail. But if you choose the second option, some of you aren't going home." Another long silence. Kate watched the trail below, her finger light on the trigger. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. This was nothing like shooting at bottles or tin cans with Daniel. This was real. These men wanted to hurt them, maybe kill them. Finally, Frank called up one more time. "What about the gold? Vernon says you owe him for the trouble you've caused." "Vernon gets nothing," Cole said flatly. "Now make your choice. You've got 10 seconds. Kate counted in her head. 1, 3. At 7, she heard the sound of horses moving, but not toward them. The riders were withdrawing, heading back down the defile. Cole kept his rifle trained on the opening for another full minute before he finally lowered it. "They're gone," he said, "but they'll circle around, try to cut us off further north. We need to move." They mounted up and rode hard for the next 3 hours, following Cole's barely visible trail through the canyon country. By mid-morning, they'd crossed the river Cole had mentioned and climbed into higher terrain, pine forests replacing the scrub brush of the lowlands. Finally, Cole called a halt in a small clearing beside a spring. "We'll rest here for an hour," he said. "Let the horses drink and graze. We've put enough distance between us that I don't think they'll catch up today." Kate slid from Bella's back, her legs trembling with exhaustion and delayed fear. Now that the immediate danger had passed, reaction was setting in. She sat down heavily on a fallen log. Cole handed her a canteen. "You did good back there. Kept your head. That's not easy the first time someone's shooting at you." "It was terrifying," Kate admitted, "but I meant what I said. I wasn't going to leave you to face them alone." I noticed. There was something in his voice, a warmth that hadn't been there before. "You've got courage, Kate Brennan." Daniel would be proud. They rested briefly, then pushed on. For the next week, they traveled steadily north, always watching their back trail for signs of pursuit. But if Vernon had sent more men, they never caught up. Gradually, Kate began to relax, to believe they'd actually escaped. The landscape changed as they traveled, becoming more mountainous, more wild. They passed through settlements so small they barely qualified as towns, just a handful of buildings clustered around a crossroads or a river ford. Cole bought supplies when they needed them, but they didn't linger. Kate found herself falling into the rhythm of the trail. Wake at dawn, break camp, ride until noon, rest the horses, ride until evening, make camp, sleep, repeat. It was exhausting, but also strangely liberating. For the first time in her life, she was dependent only on herself and her companion, not on the opinions or rules of a town full of people who thought they knew what was best for her. Cole proved to be an easy traveling companion. He didn't talk much, but when he did speak, it was worth listening to. He told her stories about his time with Daniel, about the cattle drives and the wild country they'd seen. He taught her how to read trail signs, how to find water in seemingly barren country, how to navigate by the stars. In turn, Kate told him about her family, about the good times before the gambling debts had consumed her father. She told him about teaching school for a year before her father died, about the students she'd loved working with. She found herself talking about dreams she'd buried long ago, plans she'd made that had seemed impossible under Vernon's shadow. One evening, as they sat by the fire after a particularly long day's ride, Cole said, "I've been thinking about the ranch. What about it? It's a lot of work for one person. I was going to hire men to help, but it occurred to me that what I really need is a partner. Someone who's got a stake in seeing the place succeed." Kate's pulse quickened. "What are you proposing?" "I'm proposing that the money I gave you, your brother's share of that reward, could be used to buy into the ranch, make you a half-owner. We be partners, splitting the work and the profits equally." "That's very generous," Kate said slowly. "I know enough," Cole said. "You're smart, you're tough, and you're willing to work. That's more than I can say for most people. And to be honest, I could use someone to help with the business side of things. I'm good with cattle and horses, but paperwork and accounts make my head hurt. Daniel mentioned you were good with numbers." "I am," Kate admitted. "I used to keep the books from my father's store before he lost it. So what do you say?" Partners?" Kate looked into the fire, watching the flames dance and flicker. This was more than she'd hoped for. Not just freedom from Vernon, but a chance to build something, to have a real stake in her own future. "Partners," she said, extending her hand. Cole shook it firmly. "You won't regret this. Neither will you." They reached Cole's ranch 3 days later. Kate's first sight of it was from a ridge overlooking a broad valley. A river wound through the center, glinting in the afternoon sun. Beyond it, mountains rose in serrated ranks, their peaks still capped with snow, despite the summer heat. The cabin sat on a slight rise above the river, built of logs with a stone chimney. It was small but solid-looking, with a covered porch and glass windows. Actual glass, not oilcloth. A corral and barn stood nearby, and Kate could see cattle grazing in the distance. "It's beautiful," she said. Cole looked pleased. "It's home. Come on, I'll show you around." The cabin was more spacious inside than it looked from the outside. One large room served as kitchen, dining area, and living space, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. A ladder led to a loft above. Cole explained he'd been sleeping up there, but he'd build the Kate her own room off the main space. "That'll take time, though," he said. "For now, you can have the loft, and I'll sleep down here. I don't want to put you out of your own bed." "You're not. We're partners now, remember? Besides, I've been meaning to build a proper bedroom for a while. This gives me the excuse to actually do it." Over the following weeks, Kate threw herself into the work of making the ranch prosper. She took over the account books, discovering that Cole's finances were in even worse shape than he'd admitted. He'd invested almost everything into land and cattle, leaving himself with barely enough cash to operate, but the underlying operation was sound. With careful management, they could make it work. She also took charge of the cabin, making it more of a home than a bachelor's quarters. She planted a garden, sewed curtains for the windows, and organized the chaos of Cole's kitchen into something functional. She learned to cook over the open fire and to preserve meat and vegetables for the winter ahead. Cole, true to his word, built her a bedroom. He worked on it in the evenings after the day's ranch work was done, measuring and cutting and fitting boards with patient precision. Kate helped when she could, learning the basics of carpentry alongside everything else. They settled into a routine, a partnership that felt comfortable and right. They worked together during the day, sometimes riding out to check on the cattle, sometimes working closer to home on repairs and improvements. In the evenings, they'd sit on the porch and watch the sun go down behind the mountains, talking or simply enjoying the quiet. Kate felt herself changing, becoming stronger and more confident. The frightened woman who'd hidden behind a water trough in Copper Ridge seemed like someone from another life. Out here, she was discovering who she really was, who she could be when she wasn't trapped by other people's expectations and demands. One evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch watching the stars come out, Cole said, "You know, I never asked if you had someone back in Copper Ridge. Someone besides Vernon, I mean." Kate laughed. "No, there was a boy I liked when I was 16, but he married someone else. After that, I was too busy taking care of my father and trying to keep creditors from the door. Romance wasn't exactly a priority." What about now?" Kate turned to look at him, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting. "What about now? Is it a priority now?" Her heart began to beat faster. She'd been trying not to think about this, about the way her feelings for Cole had gradually shifted from gratitude to something deeper. She'd told herself it was just appreciation for a friend, nothing more. But sitting here in the darkness, with his shoulder almost touching hers and his voice low and intimate, she couldn't lie to herself anymore. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I'm still figuring out who I am without Vernon hanging over me, without my father's debts defining every choice I make. It's hard to think about the future when the present is still so new." Cole nodded. "That's fair." "I shouldn't have asked." "I'm glad you did," Kate said quickly. "It's just complicated. Complicated I can handle. It's lies and pretense I can't stand." They sat in silence for a while longer, the tension between them both uncomfortable and electric. Finally, Kate stood. "I should turn in. We've got an early start tomorrow if we're going to move those cattle to the upper pasture." "Kate," Cole said as she reached the door. She turned back. "For what it's worth," he said, "I'm glad you're here. Not just because you're a good partner, though you are, but because this place feels like a real home for the first time since I built it."
"You did that." Kate's throat tightened.
"Good night, Cole. Good night." Inside her small bedroom, Kate lay awake for a long time, listening to the night sounds of the ranch and thinking about the strange path that had brought her here. 3 months ago, she'd been trapped, facing a future she dreaded with a man she despised. Now she was free, with a stake in a ranch and a partnership with a man she was beginning to care for more than she probably should. It was complicated, just as she'd told Cole. But maybe complicated was better than simple. Maybe complicated meant there were possibilities, choices, things that could grow and change with time. She fell asleep finally, dreaming of mountains and open sky and a future that was hers to shape. The autumn came on fast in Montana, the nights turning cold and the aspen leaves changing to gold almost overnight. Kate and Cole worked dawn to dusk preparing for winter, cutting hay, repairing the barn roof, butchering cattle to salt away for the cold months ahead. They hired 2 men to help with the roundup, drifters looking for temporary work. Kate kept her distance from them, and Cole made it clear that she was his business partner, not hired help or available for courting. The men worked for 6 weeks, then took their wages and moved on. With the hired men gone and winter closing in, the ranch felt very isolated. The nearest town was a full day's ride, and that was weather permitting. Kate and Cole were dependent on each other in ways that went beyond partnership. They were each other's only company, only backup, only human contact for months to come. One morning in late October, Kate woke to find fresh snow on the ground and Cole already up, standing on the porch looking worried. "What's wrong?" she asked, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders against the cold. "Storm coming," he said, pointing west. Dark clouds were building over the mountains, their bellies heavy with snow. "A big one, if I'm reading the signs right. We need to get the cattle down from the high pasture before it hits, or we'll lose them." They saddled up immediately and rode out, pushing their horses as fast as they dared through the snow. The cattle were scattered across several miles of high country, and it took hours to find them all and start them moving down toward the valley. The storm hit while they were still miles from home. The snow came down in thick, blinding sheets. The temperature dropped so fast Kate could feel it even through her heavy coat. The cattle, spooked by the sudden change, tried to scatter. It took everything Kate and Cole had to keep them bunched together and moving in the right direction. Kate's hands went numb despite her gloves. Her face felt like it was being scraped with knives. She could barely see Cole through the driving snow, just a dark shape on horseback moving alongside the herd. They finally got the cattle into the lower pasture near the ranch as darkness fell. Cole's barn wasn't big enough for all of them, but the cattle clustered against its lee side, using it as a windbreak. Cole and Kate put their own horses away, rubbing them down and giving them extra feed. Inside the cabin, they stripped off their wet outer clothes and huddled near the fire. Kate's teeth chattered so hard she could barely speak. Cole wrapped a blanket around her and poured hot coffee. "That was close," he said. "Another hour and we'd have lost half the herd. How long will the storm last?" "Could be days. We're snowed in until it passes and we can dig out." Kate looked around the small cabin. Days, maybe weeks, trapped here with Cole. She wasn't sure if the flutter in her stomach was anxiety or anticipation. The storm raged for 3 days. Snow piled up against the cabin walls, nearly reaching the windowsills. Cole had to dig a tunnel to reach the barn twice a day to care for the horses. Kate kept the fire going and the cabin warm, preparing meals from their stores of dried meat and beans and the vegetables she'd preserved from her garden. They played cards. They told stories. They read aloud from the few books Cole owned. And they talked, really talked, about things they'd never discussed before. Cole told her about his childhood, about the sister he'd lost, and the guilt he still carried. Kate told him about her mother's death, about watching her father slowly destroy himself with gambling and drink. On the third night, as the wind howled outside and the fire crackled, Cole said, "I've been meaning to ask you something." Kate looked up from the sock she was darning. "What? That day in Copper Ridge when I offered you the gold and a way out, what made you decide to come with me? You could have taken the money and stayed, or gone somewhere else on your own." Kate set down her mending. "Honestly, I was terrified. You were a stranger, and I had no idea if I could trust you. But when you talked about Daniel, about the promise you made to him, I saw something in your eyes. Truth, I guess, and honor. Those were things I hadn't seen in Vernon's eyes or in my father's for a very long time. And now? Do you regret coming?" "No," Kate said without hesitation. "This is the freest I've ever felt in my life. Even trapped by a snowstorm in a cabin miles from anywhere, I'm freer than I was in Copper Ridge. Because this is my choice. This life, this partnership, everything we're building together, it's mine in a way nothing ever was before." Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I need to tell you something." "About why I really came for you?" Kate's chest tightened. "I thought you explained that." "Daniel's promise. That's part of it, but not all of it. The truth is, Daniel talked about you constantly. For 2 years, I heard stories about his smart, strong, capable sister who deserved better than what life had given her. I felt like I knew you before we ever met. And when he died, when I made that promise, part of me was relieved, because it gave me an excuse to find you, to see if you were really the person Daniel had described. And," Kate's voice came out barely above a whisper, "and you're more than that. You're not just capable and smart. You're brave. You're kind, you laugh when things are hard instead of complaining. You work as hard as any man I've ever known, but you've still got softness to you, still know how to make a place feel like home. I told myself we'd be partners, that I'd help you get free and then we'd build a ranch together and that would be enough. But it's not enough. Not for me." Kate's heart hammered in her chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I've fallen in love with you." "I tried not to. I told myself it was too soon, that you needed time to figure out who you were without Vernon's shadow hanging over you. But I can't help how I feel. And I needed you to know, even if you don't feel the same way. Even if you never will." Kate couldn't breathe. She stared at Cole across the flickering firelight, seeing him clearly for maybe the first time. Not just a rescuer or a business partner, but a man. A good man who'd risked everything to help her, who'd kept his word to a dead friend, who'd built a life out here in the wilderness through sheer determination, and who was offering to share it with her. "I do," she said. Cole's eyes widened. "You do what?" "Feel the same way. I've been trying not to admit it, even to myself. I kept thinking it was just gratitude, or loneliness, or the intensity of everything that's happened. But it's not. It's real. I love you, Cole." He crossed the space between them in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. They kissed, tentative at first, and then with growing passion. Kate felt something inside her break open, something she'd kept locked away for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Hope. Joy. The possibility of a future built on love instead of obligation. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I should probably ask you properly. Kate Brennan, will you marry me? Not because of any debt or obligation, but because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Kate laughed, the sound bright with happiness. Yes, I'll marry you." "We'll have to wait for spring to get to a preacher," Cole said. "The snow won't clear until March at least." "I can wait," Kate said. "I've waited my whole life for this. A few more months won't kill me." They were married in April, in the small church in the town Cole had mentioned that first day. It was a simple ceremony, attended only by a few local ranchers and their wives who'd become friendly with Cole over the years. Kate wore a dress she'd sewn herself from fabric Cole had bought on a supply run, white cotton with blue flowers. The preacher pronounced them man and wife, and Cole kissed her in front of everyone. Then they rode back to the ranch together. Their ranch now, officially and legally, the deed changed to reflect their partnership and their marriage. That summer they expanded the ranch, buying more land and more cattle. Kate's careful management of their finances paid off, and they were able to hire 3 permanent hands to help with the work. The ranch prospered in ways Cole had never managed alone. In the fall, Kate discovered she was pregnant. Cole was terrified and overjoyed in equal measure. He fussed over her constantly. trying to prevent her from doing any heavy work. Kate tolerated this for about a week before sitting him down and explaining firmly that she was pregnant, not an invalid, and he needed to let her live her life. Their daughter was born the following May, during a thunderstorm that rolled across the valley with spectacular lightning and booming thunder. They named her Lily, after Kate's sister, and Daniel as a middle name, after the brother who'd made it all possible. Cole held the baby with shaking hands, his eyes wet with tears. "She's perfect," he whispered. Kate, exhausted but happy, smiled up at him. "She is. Just like her father." "I still can't believe this is real sometimes," Cole said. "That you're here, that we have this life, this family." "Believe it," Kate said. "It's as real as anything ever has been." Years later, when Lily was old enough to ask questions, Kate told her the story of how she and Cole had met. She told her about Daniel's bravery and Cole's honor and the choice she'd made that day in Copper Ridge. She told her about the ride north, the fight in the canyon, the long winter snowed in together. Lily listened with wide eyes. "So Papa rescued you," she said when Kate finished. Kate shook her head. "No, sweetheart. Your papa gave me the chance to rescue myself. There's a difference. He offered me a choice when no one else would, but I'm the one who had to be brave enough to take it. We saved each other, really. That's what love is. Not one person rescuing another, but two people choosing each other and building something together." "I want to be brave like you when I grow up," Lily said. Kate hugged her daughter close. "You already are, baby. You already are." Outside, she could hear Cole working with the horses in the corral. The ranch had grown over the years, become more prosperous than they dreamed. They'd built a proper house to replace the cabin, added more land, hired more men. The original cabin still stood, though, and sometimes Kate and Cole would sleep there, remembering those early days when it was just the two of them against the world. Kate walked out onto the porch and looked across the valley. The sun was setting, painting the mountains gold and purple. The river gleamed like a ribbon of light. This was her land, her home, her life. She'd chosen it, fought for it, built it with her own hands and heart. Vernon Hayes had wanted to own her, to possess her like property. Her father's debts had nearly sold her into a lifetime of misery, but she'd refused to accept that fate. She'd bet everything on a stranger's honor and her own courage, and she'd won more than she could have imagined. Cole came up beside her and wrapped an arm around her waist. "What are you thinking about? How far we've come," Kate said. "How different things could have been." "Regrets? Not one," she said, turning to kiss him. "Not a single one." As darkness fell and the first stars appeared, they stood together on the porch of the home they'd built, looking out at the empire they'd carved from wilderness and determination. Behind them, their daughter played with wooden horses Cole had carved for her. Around them, the ranch settled into evening quiet, cattle lowing in the distance, horses nickering in the barn. This was what freedom looked like, Kate thought, not just the absence of chains or debts or obligations, but the presence of choice. The ability to build something of your own, to love who you wanted, to make mistakes and triumphs on your own terms. Vernon Hayes was a distant memory now, a shadow from another life. She'd heard through occasional letters that he'd married eventually, some woman from back east who didn't know his reputation. Kate hoped the woman was happy, or at least safe, but she didn't think about it much. The past was the past, and she had a future to live. "I love you," Cole said, breaking into her thoughts. "I love you too," Kate replied. Now and always. They stood together as night fully fell, watching their land disappear into darkness, knowing it would still be there in the morning, solid and real and theirs. This was their legacy, built on a promise to a dead friend and the courage of a woman who refused to accept someone else's version of her future. And in the end, that was worth more than all the gold in the world.